Hey, everyone, just finished recording with Pat Hiban, and we have a great discussion on the ups and downs of growing and scaling a business, but also the long-term impact of being intentional about your network. Pat talks about the business regrets that he has and some of the things that he did and he wishes he could do differently now that we can learn from and how we can avoid these regrets. Pat started 10 businesses using the ELF concept, easy, lucrative, and fun. Through all that, you'll never guess how many hours he works now because of all the work he put in early on. Check it out. You're going to love this discussion. Hello and welcome to the Purpose Matrix. Very excited for today's guest, Mr. Pat Hiban. Pat, how are you doing today?
Good. What's going on, Phil? Good to be here.
Life is good, Pat. Great to have you on. I appreciate you taking the time. You're in high demand, so I very much appreciate it. For our listeners, we're in for a treat today. So first, longtime entrepreneur, investor, and educator. He's poured a lot into people, which has led to a lot of his success. In entrepreneurship, in real estate, in business, and after that too. $1 billion realtor, number one RE/MAX worldwide in 2004. Worldwide number one. That takes not just hustles, but sales and leadership and a lot of other things. We're going to talk about that. Author of 3 different books, 6 Steps to 7 Figures, Tribe of Millionaires, and the Quitter's Manifesto. Co-founder of GoBundance, I think is so powerful. The power of your associations. I'm a member of that. And honestly, just a good dude. So Pat, tell us your story. If we go back a few years, because there's been some transitions here and we'll talk about those pivot points, but let's go back to really when you're in business building mode early. And what were your keys to success early on in your career?
Well, if we're talking about business building, the life of a real estate agent, I guess even as a single agent, you're kind of like a business in and of itself, right? You're like a one-man business. And I was for many years, probably, 10, 15 years, I was a one-man business. And then just like most realtors now, I created a team back when there wasn't anybody doing that.
I want to jump in and ask you a question about the team building. During that time, you look back and you have a lot of joy from thinking about that. Were you always enjoying the element of team building? You're such a social being. Obviously, there was stress around it, but what was your mindset if you go back to that time and the enjoyment you had from it while it was happening versus your reflection of that team building phase?
Here's the thing, right? When things work in your favor, it's fun. In 2008, the market crashed and it no longer was fun. I had to fire 22 employees in 1 year. I would fire 5 on a Friday, then I'd wait 6 weeks, then I'd fire 5 more. And it came to the point where people knew they were going to get fired. And it was brutal, right? And, the 2009, 2010 were just soul sucking. And quite frankly, that was kind of one of the reasons I got out. In hindsight, that was 20 years ago, not 2015 to 20, let's say. But, I kind of took my money off the table like a winner at a craps game in Las Vegas, right? And just took all the chips and threw them down in the safe in the room and went to bed so that I wouldn't throw good money after bad. I just I had this huge lease of this office that was wasteful and a lot of leases on copy machines and things like that. And then when they ended, it was such a relief that I was like, okay, now I'm out. And, that was really the beginning of the end for me for my real estate career. Now, I started in 1987, so I had a good, 23, 25-year run. The team building was a blast while it worked, but it was terrible when it didn't. And the funny thing is, I look back now and I'm kind of very sad about this because I am a relationship person.
Look, business is not easy and you had to make tough decisions. And that's part of leadership is making tough decisions. And you maybe in hindsight, I think you probably made the right decisions and maybe there's some second guessing that, but I think for sure what you're reflecting on is the approach you took, how you did it. We talk a lot about, there's the results you get and what you do, but how you do things is what it seems like you're second guessing in your mind is, could have you done it a little bit better? But at the end of the day, you're also, I think, focusing on the hard part of this, when, if you reflect back from your 22, 23-year career in real estate, not only you built a business, you had a lot of fun doing it. You won for a long time. You probably made the right moves from a financial perspective. Certainly you could probably have done some things different 08 and 09, but you're in a pretty good spot from a total financial perspective. And you also helped a lot of people make a lot of money and do really, really well, and trained them and set them up. Even like just from knowing you and your mindset, you impacted their mindset. And I think you separating from what they think and knowing you develop them, I think is really important, because they're probably better off in their life and in their career. Whether they recognize or not, you can't control, but I think they probably do that.
No, that's very insightful, Phil. I mean, I think you're 100% right. I think they look back on the whole experience very fondly. It is what it is. So anyways, I wrote my first book, 6 Steps to 7 Figures, traveled around the country presenting it to try to get it on the bestseller list. And then I eventually started about 10 different companies, all with the premise of ELF, which is easy, lucrative, and fun. And while ELF sounds great, and it does work eventually, you have a lot of failures with ELF because it's kind of a lazy way to do business. You try to do as little work as possible, and it's really hard to start a business when you're trying to do as little work as possible. So I think out of those 10, 8 failed. And I put, money into them and time into them and created really cool looking logos but they just didn't work. And so 2 took off. One is GoBundance, which you're a member of and, well, which is doing very well. And the other is DAPT Acquisitions, which is an apartment company. We have about 2,500 apartments throughout the state of Georgia and a couple in Florida. And those are my 2 winners of the 10. And I kind of, both are ELF because they're run by other people. And I'm just one of the early founders, which is the way I wanted it. I said to myself, after going through all that with real estate for 25 years, I want to do something where, like, I'm not the guru, where I'm not the one in charge. It's not just me. And I lucked out in both of those companies where it's somebody else who's the key man, and I'm just one of the early guys that believed in them from the beginning.
Well, I want to say that I like how you said lucked out. So 2 out of 10 is lucky, I guess. But I think first of all, ELF, easy, lucrative, and fun. And the reality is the process to identify the 2, to build the 2, to figure out the right partners for the 2. If you look at those individually, they met the ELF criteria. But if you look at the whole process of the 10, like, it's just not easy. Like, identifying the right businesses that are easy, lucrative, and fun was, I assume, in the whole, a lot of hard work. Of course, if you had the foresight at the time to just do the 2, that could have met the ELF as a whole. But you had 8 failures that you had to figure out that created pain. So if you look at the whole, it's not just easy until you figure out what is just easy, I guess is what I'm going to say. Like, there's a lot of hustle, grinding, figuring out, studying different businesses, different people, things like that. And I'm obviously familiar with GoBundance and I'm also familiar with DAPT Acquisitions as well, and what you do and who you invest with, which is fantastic. So I want to talk about, during that time period, just for our listeners, GoBundance is a group of entrepreneurs, a lot of real estate investors, but entrepreneurs, business owners, doctors, lawyers, all kinds of folks. And I'm a member, as you said, and it's really impactful when you get around. We're going to do a goal setting discussion with 2 other people in my GoPod, which is part of GoBundance, in the next couple of weeks. And while we're going to talk about goal setting, I also want to illustrate to our listeners the power of, like, your network and who you hang out with. So, this wasn't, I don't, tell me the story here a little bit more, because you started the business formally in this time frame, but that doesn't mean you weren't using the principles before then. So talk about the power of network and associations in general, and then how this evolved.
It's interesting, Phil, because, like, we all have friends from high school and we all have friends from college, and say 15 to 23. It's very easy to make friends. We're very accepting of friends. It's almost like breathing, right? Like you can, like these, a kid in grade school could go to school and make a friend in a day that lasts a lifetime, right? And all they had to do is breathe. My point is, once you reach a certain age, I think you're, because of what's going on in life with kids and marriage and certainly grinding. I think grinding has a lot to do with it. You just don't got time. It dissipates, it drops. And it just becomes harder when you try to make a friend at 38. It's just very difficult because of my social nature. Would connect with people at like a Remax convention. Like Remax had these conventions every year and it'd be in Vegas or whatever. And I'd go there by myself and just hang out the whole time with like other Remax agents that I had commonality with. We'd go out drinking in a limousine, and I'd tell my wife, "Oh, last night I took a limousine with this guy. He's from Tennessee, and this guy is from Arizona." And she goes, "Well, how the hell do you know all these people?" I said, "Oh, they're real estate agents. You know what I mean? I just met them. I just talked to them." And she always found that odd. And then I'd go home, and all the people around me would think it was odd that I would stay in touch with these people. I just found that if you kind of put yourself out there and you let the universe take over, that relationships are going to naturally occur. In 1997, I took a course with about 20 other people, and I met David Osborne at that course. He was from Texas. I was from Baltimore, Maryland. So we're at opposite ends of the United States, but we hit it off. We became friends. We became accountability partners. About 7 years later, I was in Chicago. I was running. I got up early in the morning to go running. I was tying my shoes. Another guy was there tying his shoes, going running. We started chatting, and we decided to run together. And that was Tim Rode. And I met him in Chicago. And then I introduced him and David. Then I met Mike McCarthy through David. And then fast forward, this is the story of GoBundance, by the way. This is all these people. Mike McCarthy was from Lancaster, Pennsylvania or something. Tim was from Northern California. David was from Austin, Texas. I was from Baltimore, Maryland. So all over the country. And we met and we started hanging out. Then fast forward, like, I don't know, 15 years. And I am volunteering with my children to chaperone a bus of inner city kids through Baltimore City, whose parents, mainly their moms, are in jail. It was called Children of Incarcerated Parents. All the chaperones are women, including my kids and my niece who I brought. One guy on two huge buses with all these inner city kids, one other male, some guy is 21 years old. So I start chatting to this young guy. He's 21 years old. And that is Matt King, who actually is the CEO of GoBundance now and runs this huge company. And my point in all of this, and there's so much more to all these stories, but my point in all this is you just never know when you're going to meet someone who's going to change your life and someone who you could go into business with. And you just got to put yourself out there. Most people don't leave their home. They don't leave Ohio. You know what I mean? And they just never find out. And that's kind of what we created at GoBundance, is opportunity to meet friends and create GoPods and create relationships with people like you did in college, or like you did between 15 and 25 that you would never have been able to form before. And really all you got to do is have faith in the process and put yourself out there for the universe, and it'll be shocking what happens.
Yeah. And one thing I want to go back to is, so first of all, the power of your network is so important. And we'll come back to, what are you, like, what areas of life are you talking about with these people? But before we do, I want to talk through, I want to put myself in our listeners' shoes. So it's an entrepreneur, or someone that's thinking about entrepreneurship. It's just a business leader in a corporation, perhaps. It's a real estate investor, real estate agent, whoever this business leader, business owner, or aspiring business leader is. And they're sitting there thinking, okay, like I don't have these events to go to. Maybe I have some friends that might consider what you called, and I'm familiar with, but an accountability partner. If someone doesn't have, they have people that might be interested, but they don't have an accountability partner formally. Do I just reach out to my buddy and say, hey, it seems like you're trying to be a better husband, father, mother, daughter, whatever it is, mother, wife. I want to be better. How do I start this? Or how do you go about this? Because for you, it took 8-10 years to figure this out. It seems like, and the pieces to come together before you formed this into a company. It was very natural for you at first. So how do the listeners make it like do this kind of naturally?
I feel like it's got to be mutually beneficial. I mean, you could get advice from somebody, and there's a million people we get advice from, or maybe see on stage and shake their hand and ask them some question that's a cliche, and they give us an answer that's a cliche. But I feel like it has to be mutually beneficial. Meaning, you go to, let's just take your buddy from your hometown who has 4 kids and is just like an awesome dad. I mean, certainly you could emulate him and ask him questions, and he could be your mentor and how to be a great father. But at the same time, in order for the relationship to last, I feel like he should be also asking you, oh, well, Phil, you're really good with money. Like, what do you think I should do with this 10 grand that I just got as a bonus? And there's some back and forth, because after a while, if it's a one-way relationship where it's like, you're the one asking for advice all the time, you should feel bad, just guilty. And you should feel like it's a one-way relationship and it's not healthy. And he's going to get annoyed, right? Because it's like, Phil's always asking me these damn questions, and when's he going to learn?
Yeah. And I think a big part, first of all, the one thing I would say for sure that you have to have, and if you're listening to this, you probably have, and your buddy has to have, in my opinion, is a growth mindset. They want to get better. And then the second piece of it is that it can be mutually beneficial, whether that's around business or relationships or health or family, like whatever it is, faith, any of those categories, you can strengthen each other. And if you have 2 people, that will compound. 1 + 1 is greater than 2. However, if you have 3 people or 4 people and form an accountability group, which is what GoBundance does, it grows exponentially, because I'm learning so much from my other GoPod members about every area of life, including when they're teaching or coaching each other on it. I'm a fly on the wall just listening to that conversation saying, holy cow, I'm going to write that down, because that's absolutely fantastic. So, we've talked about this before, but the power of your network of association just is so incredible. And I appreciate you sharing that, Pat. So if we fast forward, you create GoBundance, you have this major shift out of real estate into, being passive, where you've identified people that can be the experts and really run this. Of course, you're like a board of advisors seat more than you are in there running it. But how did this evolve over time from the early 2010 timeframe, it seems like?
First of all, Tim and David and I used to take a trip every year that was an international trip. We would go to Austria, or we went to Romania and Bulgaria. We just go to these weird places, mainly because David traveled around the world for 2 years as a young kid, and had been everywhere. So wherever he hadn't been, that's where we ended up going. And Tim and I didn't care. And so we did that for 7 or 8 years. And then we also did another thing where we visited each other and went hiking for 5 days. We did the Appalachian Trail. We did Mount Whitney, the John Muir Trail. we did a bunch of stuff like that. And so eventually we got tired of hearing the same stories of each other. And so we started inviting other people. And what made it unique was that we were very diligent about, like, we would each write these questions that were like deep questions that one person would ask and the other three and all three of us would have to answer. And a lot of them had to be like, a lot of them are like, well, what is your credit score? What is your net worth? How much do you weigh? Stuff like that. But in addition to that, it's like, how many houses will, the Board of Realtors report are sold in 2012? And, what will building starts be up or down? Will the price of silver be up or down? That sort of thing. And we would ask those along the Appalachian Trail back and forth for 3 or 4 days. And it was just our thing. That's what we did. And so we started inviting other people one at a time, and some fit, some didn't. And then one time we had something at David's house. I think we had like 16 guys there at his house in Colorado. And of course, we didn't charge anything. It was just like, hey, we're going to hire a caterer, and everybody chip in $400 for the caterer. And then we had one, and we had 38 people there. Same thing. We didn't charge, just for the food and room, and for like $500 or something. And we had 38 guys there. And so after that, we were exhausted, and we're like, holy dirt, because we did it all ourselves, me, David, and Tim. And we're like, that was a lot of energy. We have to start charging money. Let's start charging money. From the beginning, we also knew that we didn't want to make it a guru tribe. We didn't want to be the Anthony Robbins, who's standing up there and like, you come to see Anthony. We wanted it to be a member-led thing, because we knew that all the real meat and potatoes happen in the hallways and at the bar and on the golf course and on the ski slope. So we knew there was a secret sauce there, and we purposely said, none of us should be up there being like the Pat Hiban show. We always hired CEOs, and we always paid big money for CEOs. A lot of times the CEO made way more than we did as owners. Probably had 6 CEOs over 12 years or however long it's been. So that's it. And that's how it finally got a couple that worked, and we're off to the races.
Well, I can say that. So just a couple of the names. First of all, Matt King was on our show. Mike McCarthy has been as well. We're gonna get some of the other guys on here too in the near future. But what stands out for me there is, first of all, as you had like the early group was real estate, but they're like, how do we branch out? Like, you're just the through line here is intentionality. How do we specifically or intentionally branch out and identify people that are experts in other spaces of investing or a business, and maybe even health or family or whatever it might be, but you're being very intentional. You said how you don't even know how you found the other guys, but like the other part of this is, if you have a group that's working and supporting each other, your network, if you have a group of 4 or 5, is so significantly bigger. Like, you might have found one of those guys, and Mike McCarthy might have found another guy. Like, your network was so broad that's probably how you identified different connections and brought them in. The through line here again is just the intentionality of network, and what it became is intentional lifestyle and intentional life for you. So let's fast forward now to the impact of being around this network, and just being very intentional with your network has led to you being very intentional with your life, how you design it, how you live it. So tell me more about what that looks like, in the last couple of years and today.
Well, I turned 60 this year. So even though in my head I'm 25,
I understand.
I'm 60,
I thought as you think about that, I thought first you were going to go with a bald joke there, which I can completely understand, Pat. So if you're watching this on YouTube, me and Pat I'm not quite 60, but we both look very similar from the eyes up, if you will. So anyway, you can get an image, or you can check it out on YouTube. But Go ahead. Sorry to cut you
So
off there.
yeah, no problem. So today's a lot different. I always had a goal that I wanted to be a guy that just kind of read reports, worked an hour or two a day and just, looked my emails, checked, whether with your accountant, lawyer, property manager, and I manifested that, right? Like I manifested that. That's about, people ask, are you retired? And I'm like, no, um, I work like an hour a day. And they're like, what? But it's really true. You know what I mean? Like, I'll do this. I think you're my only appointment today. I'm going to decide whether I'm going to go to the gym or go to the yoga class later. So it's like, that's all I need, but I need something. Yeah. So that's my life now. And that's kind of how I wanted it.
So from a long-term, wealth creation, high level investing, like portfolio strategy, if you will, like how many different types of assets, companies, like how would you encourage people that are maybe in that phase to be that, they have, a business owner that has, maybe a lot of income, but maybe not a lot of time. And because honestly, like you have a lot of time available to you, but that doesn't mean you're spending a lot of time on this, right? An hour or two a day. So like talk through how you think about, your investing as a whole, your strategy.
It's hard. First of all, it's hard. I mean, people think you want it to be easy, but it really is hard. A lot of stuff doesn't go as you want, and you end up having to make a lot of decisions that are hard decisions. It's just not easy, but it is fun, when they work out. Like I've had 3 small companies that I put like $100,000 in that I've gotten over $1 million back out of. But I've also had a bunch of lately, this year's been terrible, of these venture funds that have just gone to nothing or close to nothing. A lot, 2 in the cannabis space, 1 in the software space. So it's just not fun. I've had a bunch of companies go to zero that I've put a couple $100,000 in. To answer your question, it's so hard to say, right? It just, you never know from time to time what the best advice is. Certainly in hindsight, there's tons of advice. You should have invested in the stock market in 2022, right?
Yep.
You should have invested in Bitcoin in 2022. Now, does that mean you should put all your money in that today? I don't know. Probably not. They're probably peaking, right? Who knows?
I think the main lesson is it's first of all, it's very dynamic, like it's changing. So like the right answer now doesn't mean it was the right answer 3 years ago, and it won't be the right answer 3 years from now. I also, the major thing that comes through there is, I think relative to your total capacity to invest it, in anything, whether that's a stock market or whatever, if you put all your eggs in one basket, it might go phenomenally well, and it might go phenomenally bad. It might go horrible. And Pat has a lot of years of investing in a lot of different things with a lot of counsel and network around him that, even with that, he's lost a lot of money, but the net effect of that overall is he's made a lot of money and his returns are, I'm sure very, very good. So I think that's the lesson is, so if it's a smaller amount of money you're investing, you probably want to diversify that early on. And honestly, different phases of your career and investing career, diversification, not just from a financial strategy, but from a learning and understanding strategy. So you know where your sweet spot is. Maybe you are phenomenal at investing in businesses because you know them so well and you can dissect them and understand them. Or maybe that's real estate for you. Maybe you know crypto really, really well and you know how to do. So I think there's a learning phase and just managing your portfolio as a whole. If nothing else, looking at the percentages of things, like the percentage of what you're investing in, at least being intentional and making decisions about it. So I appreciate that insight. And I think again, the big through line there is, it's not easy. There's not just like your elf earlier, like you wanted to hit the easy button a little bit. And while you found the 2, there was 8 failures. I think that's the through line of this discussion is, life is not, if you make hard decisions now and you invest the time, it will get easier, but it doesn't just get, if you make all the easy decisions now, it will probably get harder. So trying to figure yourself out over the course of time, I think, is important. So Pat, I appreciate it. I want a couple closing questions here. So if you just step back and like, if you think about, you were in the hustle phase, you're in a different phase now, but like, how do you think about success, excellence, fulfillment? Like, what does that mean? What stands out there?
I think it's pertinent to time of life, really. Well, at least for me, I think for most people too. And I think there's a reason why it's pertinent to time of life. I remember hearing a guy go, "Oh yeah, you should be retired. You should retire from 30 to 50 and then go bust your ass when you're 50, because that's when you can really enjoy life and enjoy your kids and all that." Everybody should strive for success in the younger ages of life, and then fulfillment. I think everybody should strive for fulfillment in the later ages of life because they're easier. It's easier when you're young to be successful. It's easier when you're older to be fulfilled because you don't care as much when you're older, and you do care as much when you're younger, and that's what makes you successful at success, and that's what makes you successful at fulfillment, is not caring as much. Does that make sense?
It does. And like my takeaway is like, I think, I think that there's different phases and it's age dependent, but I also think it's like, it's almost more experience dependent where you have to like graduate from or mature through the process of success to really understand what fulfillment looks like, and then what, like, to me, there's like the success phase, maybe a fulfillment phase and an excellence phase. But I think there's just phases that you have to go through, just like there's financial phases of your life. There's there's even different family phases of your life. But I think from a career perspective, if we talk specifically about that, there's just phases, and you might get to phase 2 when you're 25 or 55, right? But a lot of times you can't just skip phase 1. You have to go through phase 1 to understand it, to realize honestly that I think success from a lot of times success can be very empty, honestly. And I think you might have to go through that to understand that, to really figure out what fulfillment looks like. So I think what you said makes sense. I might put a twist on it. You're thinking deeply. So if you agree or disagree, I want to hear your thoughts.
I mean, yeah, I could debate both sides, right? Success is shallow. Yeah, it has to be, I guess, right? Because you do have to, be a killer in a sense to succeed. It's just what it is. I mean, I agree with you. It's just hard to really, we could talk all day about that, right?
Again, what I would go back to is be aware of how you think about, like, what do you think as a listener? What do you think about this? Is this founded in the principles you believe in? Is this society's expectations that's driving you? I think we're debating it and we don't have all the answers. I think for you listening, debate it yourself, maybe write this out, think through like, okay, what am I going after? Why am I going after it? What is my role? Things like that. I think that's the takeaway there, is that, Pat and I are just a couple of guys trying to figure this out as well.
Trying to figure it out. And also, is this temporary? Like it's okay to, do something temporarily. Like if you have to sell your soul for 5 years to, make $30 million, and then you're going to spend the rest of your life giving back and doing what you want. And, that's a very valid argument,
Yeah. I think the depth of the selling the soul, I would maybe question, but I think,
yeah, right. What does that mean?
What you're
right?
saying.
I don't mean,
really
selling
like
hustling.
Soul,
what I mean.
I do. So I want to, I know you
well
well
your
enough.
Time. Let's just say, sell your time.
I wanted to make sure that the listeners had the context. I got it. So I just wanted to make sure. Pat, I appreciate this so much. This has been, really a good conversation. I think a deep conversation that I appreciate and is making me think about things too. So, you've done a lot. So you talked about GoBundance. You also have your 3 books. Just where would you like to direct people to find out more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Not really, but you could Google my name. There's only like 14 Hibans with Social Security numbers in the United States, Hiban. So you'll find me, Pat Hiban. Check out GoBundance, GoBundance.com. Also, Tribe of Millionaires is our book. You go to tribeofmillionaires.com and you can get a free copy of our book. Just pay the postage, but it's $20 on Amazon. But if you go to tribeofmillionaires.com, you get a free copy. Check us out. Let us know what you think.
If you're thinking about the importance of your network, what you do, like what the impact of your network can look like, the Tribe of Millionaires is a fantastic read, and it's a really easy read with a story that's like a fable that really shows the impact of your network and being intentional about it. So I encourage you to check that out. Pat, I appreciate it so much. Thanks for coming on the show. For the Purpose Matrix, signing off.